All right, just a few more moments. All right, Kavitha, you may begin whenever you want.
All right, thanks so much, Jesus. And hello, everybody, and welcome to the May 6th joint meeting of the Community Board 6 Strategic Community Planning Committee and the CB6 Housing and Homelessness Committee. My name is Kavitha Matthew, and I'm the chair of the committee, chair of the Strategic Planning Committee anyway. This meeting is called to order at 7:03 p.m. Tonight, we're joined by, let me see, do we have? I actually don't think we have vice chair on yet. We are joined by Housing and Homelessness Committee Vice Chair Rich Mintz and District Manager Jesus Perez. Thank you, Rich, for showing your face for a moment. And Jesus Perez. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there's time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. And Jesus, I don't know if we had someone else to take the minutes. I know it was supposed to be Jim, or if it's okay if he does it. Jesus, did we have someone else for the minutes?
Sorry about that. No, we don't have a backup. But what we can do is we will give Jim a copy of the video, and
he said he was willing to do it from that. So great. I just wanted to make sure that was okay. So Jim Collins has volunteered to take minutes tonight. I thank him in absentia. He will do it from the video. And you should have all received several emails from the board office with a link to a doodle sign-up sheet for minutes takers at your committee meetings for 2021. For your convenience, the link to the sign-up sheet for the Strategic Community Planning Committee, as well as the Housing and Homelessness Committee, is going to be posted in the chat right now. And at the direction of the board chair, each committee meeting must have a designated minutes taker and a designated backup, just in case. So to eliminate the guesswork, make sure that you volunteer for as many slots on the doodle sign-up sheet as you can. If more than 2 people sign up for a particular month, the office will make sure to distribute the duties equitably and will let you know in advance which months you're due to take minutes. If you've not already filled out the doodle, please do so right away. And the link to the doodle should be in the chat right now. So be a great time to fill it out. And now we will take attendance by roll call, and Jesus will conduct the roll call.
All right. I will call your name. Please unmute yourself and say present. Asia Badi.
Present.
Jim Collins. Jim Collins. Kavitha Matthew.
Present.
Sandy McKee. Sandy McKee. Wells Magali. Wells Magali. Rich Mintz.
Present.
Lou Sapersky.
Yo.
Sandro Sherrod. Sandro Sherrod. Letty Simon.
Present.
Corinne Vanderdonk. I believe she's not attending tonight. And Claude L. Winfield.
Present.
I will now call the members of the Housing Committee that are not also on this Strategic Community Planning Committee. Neil Barkley. Neil Barkley.
Present.
Thank you. Abigail Krismark.
Present.
Thank you. Anju Suresh.
Present.
Thank you. Jeff Zellen. Jeff Zellen. All right, we do have quorum.
Okay, thank you so much, Jesus. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and does appear on the screen before you. If there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Members of either committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Okay. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the April 6th Strategic Community Planning Committee meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there's no objection, we'll adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the Strategic Community Planning Committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. And seeing no objections, the minutes from the April 6th Strategic Community Planning Committee meeting are adopted, and they will soon be available on the CB6 website. The minutes of the March 15th Housing and Homelessness Committee meeting are still being drafted, but I understand that they will be submitted to the CB6 office soon. They can be adopted at the next Housing and Homelessness Committee meeting. And now I'm going to go through the usual ground rules for everybody. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click the participants icon, the participants panel should appear and you should find the raise hand function there. If you still have technical difficulty, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty. Chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom, and chat should only be used to alert us of any technical difficulties you're having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud and on the record during the meeting. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I'll identify you and you can unmute yourself so you can speak. And we're required by executive order to create a verbatim transcript of the meeting. So please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. So we can move ahead into our committee business. And I want to keep it pretty quick tonight. Our first agenda item centers around the legislative proposal, intro 2186 from City Council regarding the creation of a 10-year comprehensive planning framework. I know maybe some of you may be a little bit new to this. I don't know how much the folks from the Housing and Homelessness H&H Committee are aware of this, but it was introduced by Speaker Johnson earlier, I guess, really in the fall, and is a pretty intense proposal to provide a way of pulling together the various agencies and different pieces of city planning into a more comprehensive overall, and what was framed as being a much more efficient process and also a more equitable process. So we've actually spent a lot of time, I mean members of strategic community planning, as well as land use, as well as others who have weighed in on this. And I thank the several people who worked on framing this, drafting this resolution. Jim Collins worked on it. Anne worked on it. I don't think Anne's in the meeting tonight, although I meant to see if she wanted to join. But in any case, what it kind of came down to was that we do agree with the idea of having comprehensive. Oh, you're here. We can move Anne to panelist if she's not. Oh, yeah, she's here. Okay, you're an attendee. I didn't see that. Sorry, Anne.
Once you finish your thought, I'll move her.
Sorry?
Once you finish your thought, I'll move her.
Okay. Yes, I just want to say that overall, I hope you've had a chance to read the draft, but to summarize, we've felt that we really do support the idea of a comprehensive framework for the city. We think it's a great thing, a wonderful thing to do, but the actual legislation itself, we have a lot of issues with, and we try to lay those out in our reso in terms of what we don't agree with and what we'd probably like to see. So with that, I can open up the floor to any thoughts or questions that anybody has on the resolution or the legislation itself. Letty?
I just wanted to thank Ann and Jim and the people who worked on it. This revised iteration of it is really good. So I just want to say thank you.
Thanks, Letty. I agree. I think it, and again, there's a lot of detail that can go into this. So we did work with George Janes. He was really great and you know, had a couple of meetings with him to go into the nitty gritty of it. There's a lot of details we could pick apart in this thing, but we really felt like getting a more an overview resolution initially, and then if we need to follow up with more detail once we find out what's happening with this bill, if it's going to be, you know, go forward in any way, we can certainly do that. So any other questions, thoughts, comments around this?
I just wanted to say that Councilman Kalis had called me this afternoon on another subject, and I mentioned this to him, and he said he was interested in helping us, and he'd like to see the resolution whenever we're ready to share it with him. So that's about it.
Okay, and Claude?
I just wanted to say, I think it's a really very good draft. There is a lot more that could be said, but I think this is well written. And I would suggest that anyone that has questions about it, take a look at the YouTube meeting that George James had with Community Board 8 that Jesus recommended. It's a very good session on this.
Agreed, Claude. Thank you. I think Jesus had forwarded that to members of these committees, but again, anyone who's in the meeting or members of the general public, you know, there are some more, there's been a lot of discussion around this. There was a hearing that was like 6 or 8 hours long, or some really very long thing around it. And there have been presentations at numerous community boards by representatives of Speaker Johnson's office as well. So I see, Claude, did you still have your hand up, or was that it? And Letty, same?
No.
Okay. Okay. And Letty, did you have your hand up or no?
No.
Okay. Okay. So really, I mean, tonight's, we're hoping to take a vote on this resolution tonight so we can bring it before full board for a vote at our next meeting. And there are ideas about, you know, bigger ideas about if this resolution resonates with others at other community boards on a different level, you know, we could certainly take it further. But for now, we'd like to just take a vote on the resolution as it stands. So Jesus, can we take a vote by roll call? If there's no other questions on it. Oh, wait, I see Letty's hand again, but I think that's just.
Can I just call the question?
Yes.
Sure.
Then in second.
I'll second it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then we will take a roll call vote. All right, for record keeping purposes, I will only be calling the Strategic Community Planning Committee members. All right, when I call your name, you may state your vote in favor, opposed, abstain, or not entitled. Asia Badi.
In favor.
Thank you. Jim Collins. I don't think he's joined us yet. Kavitha Matthew.
In favor.
Thank you. Sandy McKee.
In favor.
Thank you. Wells Magali. No, I don't think she's joined us. Rich Mintz.
In favor.
Thank you. Lou Sapersky.
In favor.
Thank you. Thank you. Sandro Sherrod. Has he joined us? No, I don't think he has. Letty Simon.
In favor.
Thank you. Corinne Vanderdonk is up here. Claude L. Winfield.
In favor.
All right. Unanimous. It carries.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for that. So, we'll take this forward to full board and see what happens there. So that's really it for the first agenda item. We'll keep an eye on this legislation and see what's going on with it, if it's going to move or not, or kind of get stuck there. But definitely keep this top of mind as a really important potential change, and change to the city charter as well. So moving on to our next agenda item, we wanted to look at the budget requests. And we want to look at them in terms of strategic community planning specifically. I know that pretty much every other committee has items on there that are listed and tagged to them, and we do not, being a fairly new committee and having a lot of overlap. I did want to discuss with you guys, whether we need to join forces on any of these or add anything that we see in our discussions that has come up. I've thought of a couple of things that I'll bring up if others have thoughts on it, as well. Please, this is the time to do it. I think just going through those top 10 or so, I would say, obviously we're in agreement with all of these requests, and especially been active in terms of working hand in hand with a housing and homelessness committee on more affordable housing and more supportive housing, more senior housing. Those are all definitely in our realm of like, most important topics or most important things that we need to add to in our community. But in addition to that, I think, talking about a park or new parks or opening up the parks, new senior center, which I think is a health committee tagged item. Those are also kind of key and moving forward. There are a couple of others that I don't know if they're on the list just or got knocked off the list or never made it on the list. I really can't recall. But a couple of things that I thought of that we've talked about among people in our committee and maybe others were more like a multi-generational community center of some kind, thinking in a new way about that type of space. Also multifunctional library, like kind of a new version of a library. I know it says something about digital resources for libraries further down, but I didn't see. Oh, Asia.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up because the multi-generational community center was sort of out of my term on chair of health. And because I had done a lot of aging work, and what we found was when you look like broadly at the city, most older adults don't want to go to a senior center. They want to go where they go, like, which is the libraries, and they want to go to community centers and just continue going. So the idea of encouraging programming that's multi-generational, and then therefore then more older adults would have opportunities at these places too.
So really not defining a specific space that's, tagged as such, but the programming is where you see the
yeah
coming in.
There are examples in Queens that are really well done. Like basically because the way senior center funding is done, it's specific to like how many meals they serve. But there are models in Queens of multi-generational community centers that have a senior center housed in them. And therefore they can provide the senior center programming and fund food if they need it, but older adults can come to the entire center. And I think that sort of just given the lack of space in the city and area, that it would be more likely that we would be able to be successful in getting that.
Well, that's interesting because we do have, I think number 23 is the new senior center. And
yeah,
maybe
we've been moving it down.
Yeah, but maybe really thinking of it, and I'll get to you in a second, Lou, but thinking of it as such, and like the fact that I thought of the library like in that same breath is kind of because you see that function being really done well at the libraries, right?
Yep.
And I think most people, all of us as we age, would rather say we're going to something at the library than maybe say, you know, this is specific to seniors, you know.
The best story I heard was somebody who retired from the aging department for the aging, and one of the senior center folks, managers, like executive directors, told me, she said that I asked her, like, why don't you come to my senior center? She's like, I'm not that old. I'm retired, but I'm not that old. So there's definitely, you know, like, I definitely think senior centers are important. What they provide is really important, but I do think that we can try to encourage the city to house them in other parts, other spaces, so that they feel more inclusive.
Okay, I want to continue that conversation, but let me hear from Lou first.
At last night's Parks Committee meeting, there was a discussion of the HVAC proposal at Esser Levy Pool House. I don't think that they went into it very deeply, but there didn't seem to be much support. I think it's quite important, and we ought to check on the windows. I'm not sure whether that part of it was done or not, but in any case, the Esser Levy Pool House does need some support for its HVAC.
Okay, good to know. Jesus, are you aware of this, or do you know if that was something that was going to be added?
That's been on the list for a few years now. The
Mhm.
problem with that one is that oftentimes the city will say, approach your city council member for funding for this. They've been unwilling to fund it on their own.
Okay.
So I believe at the budget committee on Monday, there will be 3 representatives from our 3 elected officials, 3 city council members, and that will be brought up. So if anyone is interested in that, attend Monday's budget meeting. They will bring that up.
Great. Okay, thank you for that. And thanks, Lou, for bringing that up. And I see a question or a comment from Anne. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is legit since I'm not actually a committee member here, but I would just really echo Asia's comments about funding for libraries. And I've been so impressed with how they have stepped up, how the New York Public Library has stepped up during COVID, with all kinds of services for, teachers and seniors and, kids, like story times for kids. And so I'd hate for them to get short shrift.
Agreed. And I wonder, I mean, maybe it's a discussion for other committees as well. I know the new senior center, I think, is health, is tagged as the health committee. And again, like, maybe there is some way to kind of incorporate these things and beef up a couple of asks, maybe consolidate them. The library funding could really take on a much more richer, ask. And then the kind of community center thing could be incorporated into that as well. And maybe a standalone senior center. I'm not sure. Maybe that's still necessary or not, but it's something that I certainly don't want to take away something that another committee has on there. So
Yeah.
thoughts on that, we'll keep it on there, obviously. But I do want to say, if we're going to add anything or add to it, and Jesus, you can let me know, is there a way that we can, does everything have to be tagged to one committee? Can it be tagged to multiple committees, or do we have to have some?
We initially envisioned it as tagged for multiple committees if they want,
Okay.
but there didn't seem to be a lot of appetite with the other committees. Given that strategic community planning can sort of an umbrella committee, it can touch many different types of projects. If the committee can agree upon a certain number, 5 to 10 of these that they also want to be tagged on, then we're happy to tag them. I mean, because as broad as the committee is, you guys could probably get tagged on like most of them, but that's not
Yeah, I don't think that's necessary, obviously, right. We'd really just want to focus in on the ones that we think we could potentially have the most impact on, I guess, like opportunity and impact. So again, maybe that's something we can we can discuss with those committees. But as I mentioned, I think affordable housing, supportive housing, senior housing, those three are all like kind of already on our radar so much. And maybe things about the parks and library/senior center are the ones that pop out to me. And I'd love to hear from others from the committee if there's others that you think we should really be focusing in on. I mean, you know, is there, and I guess there's waterfront stuff on here too.
Vita, can I just bring up one other comment? And I don't know if we've done this in here. The city planning does estimates on growth, on aging and growth in different communities. And I know that they had actually predicted a decrease in the aging population on the east side of New York. I haven't looked at it in about 3-4 years. It may be helpful to use that data if there's a new study out post-COVID, where people are, to make a case and use that to beef up the requests, you know?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful. I know the earlier data I saw, I think when I was sitting in on the health committee was about an aging population, but you're thinking that it's actually shifted.
As an overall, I think less than what, there is an aging population, but as an overall percent of the population, there'll be fewer New York City older adults in the east side of Manhattan. Makes sense? Let me see if I can find, I remember the report and and if I can find it, I'll share it with the committee.
All right. Thank you, Asia. I think that would be really helpful. And the more kind of data we have around this stuff, the better.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and so in the process of kind of identifying things we want to back or work on or partner with on, I guess we can reach out to these committees as we hone in on those 5 or more line items.
Well, what I suggest for that, if it's just tagging the certain items with your committee, that, just let us know, 5 or 10 of them, 5 to 10 of them, or however, or as little as you want, but no more than 10 to keep it manageable. And the office will do it. The office is the one, I mean, I put this together and assigned all these things to a certain committee. And, that's sort of the committees will more or less, we got it right. And, 1 or 2 of them was like, no, we don't really want to talk about this. So it just sort of got shifted somewhere else.
Right.
But all that would be saying is that the Strategic Community Planning Committee really cares about this particular topic. And so they want to be tagged with it. And so that every year when these things are discussed in committee, these are the items, the tagged items that the Strategic Community Planning Committee will discuss. And if there's another committee that has strong opinions on it, then those opinions, as well as this committee's, will be transmitted over to the Budget Committee, and the Budget Committee can then sort it all out.
Okay. I think, just one step further than just tagging would be weighing in on, the descriptors and the data behind it. So I'm hoping that we bring something to the table more than just like, saying, oh yeah, sign us up for these 5. I really want it to be more like, these 5 are really important to us. Look at what's in there now and see if there's anything we can do to kind of, strengthen the case. Sandy?
Is there something that we could add specifically about waterfront access? I know that's one of our 197A goals was that.
That's what I was just thinking, the waterfront, right?
And if there's something very specific, there's the removal of the parking, the NYU parking.
I mean, we've talked about kind of that continuous access and potential like opportunities.
I think at various points in time, we've talked about things like opening up certain streets or improving the access under Glick. Those kinds of things are very specific. I don't know if that's something we want to add as well.
There are really specific asks on here, right? They can be specific to a building or one location, and I think that's okay. I also think that as that like time from when we did the 197A, we get further and further from that, trying to hold on to those pieces. One way to do it, I think, is to make sure it's covered in here, right? To make sure we're stating it and we're, saying that this is super important within the budget. So yeah, Sandy, I think if you want to continue and maybe members of Strategic Community Planning and Land Use can kind of put our heads together on a couple of those so we can get that on this list before we're done with the budget requests.
There is I'm sorry, there is I'm sorry, I can't raise my hand as a host of the meeting,
Go ahead.
so please don't think I'm just sort of speaking out of turn.
No worries. Go ahead.
There is a capital request number 5, construct a continuous esplanade. Now, some people may read that as just, this just fragmented esplanade that we have, make it whole. And certainly the mayor has recently made statements about that. The waterfront access is perhaps a nuance that is not necessarily incorporated in this particular existing request. One strategy might be to do so, to incorporate it in the explanation that we see right here.
Can we look at the explanation
or
quickly?
to create an entirely different one. Whether there'll be pushback or not from the members, we'll only see. But
Okay. Can we just look at the description for that one to see if it does kind of cover what we're thinking?
And I'm glad to hear you say that you want to contribute to these explanations. Oftentimes these explanations do get neglected and the office is left to sort of fix them. These explanations have to be 800 characters long max, and they have to pack a lot of information. They have to show that the community board understands precisely what the need is that they're articulating, and try and be convincing by presenting either anecdotal or statistical evidence that this need is a real pressing need. What happened recently is that we've been trying to trim these. We had double these just a few years ago, and because oftentimes they put something on the list, we'd forget what it was. It's like, I think that needs to be done to this, and I think the request was this. And so what we want to try to eliminate is no more, I think, if I remember correctly, no, it's like we need to know precisely what these requests are. So some of these have really gotten, more specific, and if the committee can help with this, that is certainly welcome.
Yes, and reading over it, and I'll call on you guys in a second, but reading over it, I do think it sort of, it does frame that, at least the general idea of having the continuous access. It says that there's significant gaps that we're trying to fill in, but maybe we can look at how to clarify it even further. Sandy and then Lou.
I just wanted to say that I think we really have to be very specific, because continuing the greenway is one thing, but getting to the greenway is a different thing. And, I think they feel that the portion of the greenway that we have is fine, and it's not. We really need to build on that. So maybe we can come up with some very specific things that will help us with waterfront access.
Right, and maybe we can tie them into those earlier kind of remapping discussions and things, anything that's relevant in those specific areas. Lou?
I think we should be much more specific about the locations of the gaps we are trying to fill. And I think it would be helpful if we understood some of the background as to why those gaps exist, what steps were proposed to fill them, and to find out why the proposals were not executed on. And I think Gary Papish, who's a public member of Parks, might be useful on that. And there's a couple of other people who used to be on the board who could be very productive in explaining a lot of this material.
Okay, thank you, Lou. I think it's more than we can fit into like the description, but you're saying just get the history and try to come up with more of a strategy, right, based on that.
Well, actually, the gaps that have to be filled are fairly narrow. We're on the verge of the Glick issue, and the portion of the greenway around the Sutton area is under construction. So what we're talking about in reality is from roughly 41st or 42nd Street to roughly 51st Street. And there is a bit of history there. And if we can address the history of why that area has not been constructed and the proposals that were made, we might be able to compress the explanation substantially, and also build some momentum for actually filling in that gap.
I agree. And I'm looking at that description, the way that it was written, I think there's stuff in there now about COVID and, a lack of green space and open space, but maybe we can come up with, just kind of tweaking the description and getting it much more specific.
If I can be of help on that, I'd be delighted.
Great. That's good, Lou. That would be wonderful. Abigail, see your hands up.
Yes. So I really haven't been part of these discussions. I'm not on the strategic planning committee. I'm on housing, but I'm looking at the Strauss houses, which they've had security issues. It's a very specific ask. You could probably narrow it down to a specific dollar amount. And I know you're talking just about improving these descriptions for submission in the fall, but I think it would be worth tracking when these budget items were added, what progress has been made. Obviously some of this lies in a specific committee, but I think it would be helpful if there are these specific provisions that are on year after year. What can we do to sort of drive this forward? I'm not sure if that's a role for this committee, but I just kind of wanted to flag that one because it's frustrating to me to see it still on there, not having been sort of tackled yet.
Yeah, and you're right. And I haven't even been on for so long, but I remember seeing it and thinking, well, that's easy. That should be something that they can do, right? And that's
we keep track of when these requests make it onto the list. If they make it off, if they get removed or completed, we track that. That information we actually hide, but we can, look into unhiding it. We wanted to try and keep it, as streamlined as possible, but for our own internal records, we do keep track of that. Many of them do not have that date because this, I only put them into an Airtable like a couple years ago, and some of these predate that by many, many years, and so I don't know when they originally came onto the list. But as some come off and new ones come on, we will keep tracking that. Every one of these also does have a notes section, which also used to be hidden, but we've recently unhidden it. And if actual progress is made or something significant is done, let me see, then it'll be indicated here. Some don't have a lot because they are relatively new or relatively revamped. Others, for example, have a lot more expansive notes section, like this one about the pinch point. The problem is that a lot of times no progress is made. One of the reasons why I think personally we should try and go for a less is more approach as far as number of requests is because the fewer there are, the more we can focus on them. Because when there were like 80 of them, it was hard to wrangle them and sort of try and make progress on any of them. But also the committees do need to sort of try and keep these top of mind, not just during budget season, but throughout the year. Maybe take a few of them and then work on them. We can't get 53 things done in 1 year all at once, but let's take a few, handful, and then chip away at them, and then we'll go from there. But if there's something to write, we'll put it in here. If there's not, then we won't. Okay,
thank you, Jesus. And I think that, yeah, and Abigail, to your point, I think it is worth it to look at these, look at those kind of very specific asks, maybe the smaller asks, the things, and try to see if there are things we can do to maybe rethink the descriptor, rethink, how we're doing this, or see if there's some, what's getting in the way of getting that, capital budget towards those things. And this is maybe not related, but on my list after the library and the community center, I actually had upgrade to open green space around Nathan Strauss houses, because I walk by there all the time and I walk by kind of where the Second Avenue, where they have dumpsters and things, and then I see a playground beyond it, and I don't know, my architect sensors go off and I see all this opportunity for something much better designed there, much more usable, and it's just a thought in my head. It's not on here. It's something obviously we would want to engage the community and the residents in, and the agencies. So it's not something I want to just throw in there, but it's something I had been thinking of for a while, and I think I'd mentioned it to some others. Do want to look into that and see if there's any opportunities. I'm not sure, Abigail.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, and Sandy had mentioned the NYU parking lot earlier in the meeting. This one right here, it does mention specifically that lot, although it doesn't call out NYU by name. But maybe this one can be sort of a larger encompassing one that will include Strauss houses as well. Or if the committee thinks that it can put together a very strong standalone green space for Strauss houses item, that's something to consider. But yes, this one here has it's not very specific about we want to park right here in this very location, but we certainly have ideas of where parks could go.
Yeah,
and we can certainly work in Strauss houses into this.
Yeah, and like you said, Jesus, I don't know if it's something, if we did work that in, obviously, the usage of it, who gets to use it, the residents, everything would have to be figured out and worked on in a community effort. It's not something I'm just throwing out there. I just see something that looks like an opportunity, and I want to throw it out there. I think Sandy, you were trying to, no? Okay. I don't know if you're.
Sorry, no, I lost the shared screen, but I found it. So.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it. So on that note, I think, yeah, Lou, if you want to look at that descriptor for I think we talked about the waterfront access. I would like to look and maybe work a little bit on look at the housing items and work with the housing committee on that. Members of that committee that are on here tonight, if you guys are willing to kind of see if there's anything that we can do to help or to partner with on those. I'm really offering up services here, because I do think if this document has 53 asks and it's boiled down to like just the most important things, I think we can really make it as strong as possible. And I think it's great that we've kind of pared down the list to those top items. And I do think there's things that have overlap, and we can maybe figure out how to join forces on a few of those things, like Asya mentioned with the whole senior center library, multifunctional kind of thing. I do think there's things we can do to strengthen the argument behind it and make it out to be a realistic ask. So that's really where I was on the budget items. I think we've, what's our timing, Jesus, on this? We have to get anything we want to add to or change or propose?
So if you just want to have your committee tagged on something, you can take an informal vote at one of your committee meetings, so either now or in June, at June's meeting, and then we can tag you guys on a few of these. As far as input into the description, the blurb is what we call it, the blurb, or maybe modifying or introducing some nuance into some of these, sooner rather than later. These things are going to be voted on for the next fiscal year at October's full board. There will be a public hearing on these at September's budget meeting. So preferably by, if not this meeting, by your June meeting, if you have more concrete things to relay to the budget committee, that would be ideal.
Okay, great. I guess I mentioned some of the items that I think we should tag ourselves on at the bare minimum.
So what I heard about that is you were suggesting capital item number 1, which is more affordable housing, capital item number 3, which is provide more supportive housing, capital item number 4, provide more housing for seniors, and capital item number 8, new park in Community District 6. Am I correct with those 4?
You're totally correct. The only other one I had listed was 23, the new senior center. But again, I think that one maybe we think on that a little more about how we want to do that. But I just want to maybe have that in consideration. In addition to those, does anyone, and the waterfront, we're talking about that continuous Esplanade one, right?
Let's see, I don't remember what number that was. Oh yes, number 5.
Well, and is there a new one for waterfront access?
that's, I guess what we're getting at is we could come up with a new one. Maybe it's a matter of between now and our next meeting, seeing if we can yeah, I think there might be a new one that has like more specific locations really tagged, as you guys were saying.
Why don't,
It's
why
not
don't we-
about continuous esplanade. It's about how to get to a continuous esplanade.
Right.
So why don't we, for this meeting, focus on which ones you guys, this committee wants to be tagged on as well, you know, that are of the existing ones. And then for your June meeting, between now and then, at your June meeting, you can sort of talk about the very concrete ones that you want to propose. And that'll give you a few weeks to work on some wording and language and things like that. And then we can then, after they're voted on at your June meeting, we can then transmit them to the budget committee so that when they begin their deliberations on this in the fall, they'll have your draft item already in there.
It sounds reasonable to me. That sounds like a good plan. Lou, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I'm just curious. We have ADA compliant subway stations. The ADA, the subway stations are a state agency. It's the MTA. And I'm just wondering how we can, in fact, impact that, because we're not directly connected to the state. But it's a very substantial and important priority, but I'm not sure that it's something that we can impact directly.
That particular concern is something that has been raised on other kinds of issues that have that where the jurisdiction is state. That, you know, throughout the years, I guess the board has just seen fit to leave this on the list. However, there is a lot of movement on this. So as far as ones that, you know, that are state agency related, this one does seem to be moving along because the MTA wants to have all of its stations be ADA accessible. There's a text amendment coming down the pike that CB6 will soon be considering at the May 24th land use meeting that helps to advance this cause. Yeah, this is as far as the ones, many other ones, there's no traction on them, there's no movement on them. This one does have a bit of movement on it. But again, if the budget committee of the board does not want to have this on there anymore, they are, you know, they can certainly vote not to have it on it.
We have one station that is totally within Board 6. It's the only one that meets that criteria. And I was just wondering if perhaps we ought to talk to the council members who represent all a part of our district and see if there's some pressure that they can put on the state to speed that process up. That's the M and the E train that runs under 53rd Street.
Lobbying our council members for help on any number of these requests is the topic of Monday's budget committee meeting. So I would encourage anyone who has interests in that particular topic or any topic that of that nature to attend Monday's budget committee.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesus. Abigail, did you have something else?
Oh, no, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, and Sandy?
I just wanted to note that the E-train is one of the few that is ADA compliant. They took it off. I mean, they say that it's actually not an issue for it.
Could you repeat that, Sandy? I missed it.
Apparently the E-train is ADA compliant. It's not on their list of stations that need to be made ADA compliant.
Could we double check that? And thank you for the comment. Thank you for the feedback.
Okay, so do we want to go ahead and take a vote on those items? It was number 1, 3, 4, 5, and 8, I believe. Tagging, I guess, those items with strategic community planning, as well as the other committee that's currently tagged on there.
Yeah, it's not a resolution, so I guess what we can do is we can just sort of say, like we when we adopt the agenda.
Yeah, does anyone object to it?
Anyone object? And if no one objects, then we'll tag.
Okay. I'm asking the question now. Does anyone object to those items that we just mentioned? It was affordable housing, supportive housing, senior housing, continuous esplanade, a new park, and then we can talk about, adding an item as we go. I don't see any. Raise your hand if you object to that. All right. I see no hands, Jesus. I think we're good.
Okay, so we
Hopefully the
will
committees
tag those.
don't find it weird, but we'll talk to each of them about it as well.
Oh, I'm sure they'll be fine. We'll tag capital items 1, 3, 4, 5, and 8 with the tag for strategic community planning. And that means that from now on, those will be the ones that you guys will be responsible for also reviewing and opining on and things like that.
Agreed. And again, since we're tagging those, that means all of us should really go in there, read the descriptions, make sure nothing's missing or could be stated more clearly or more forcefully, and that's really all I had on the budget. I think we'll continue to work on that more specific item related to 197A waterfront access and get that hopefully maybe by our next meeting, put something together for that and a request to add it. So I don't have anything else on the budget request. Are there any other notes or any other comments on budget request items before we move on? Okay. Looks like no. I'm going to go straight into the chair's report, and I don't have a whole lot, but I just wanted to give you guys a few updates. I might call on others to give updates on this stuff, but we have not lost our focus on MSBI, obviously, and the sale. I checked in again, and I've been told there's no no progress on it, no change. So we're just kind of plugging away at our thoughts for the survey and community engagement moving forward and into the summer. Sandy and Letty have both been working a little bit on revamping the survey that we had initially launched and making it maybe a little bit more specific. I'm going to let one of them, whoever wants to take that, give us just a quick overview of where we are with that. Letty, did you want to do that one?
Sure, I will be uncharacteristically brief. What we're trying to do is use this as a means of engagement and keep the questions. We'll probably have about 5 or 6 questions. Keep them simple, and basically what they are is just to find out preliminarily who is responding, person that's responding, and what they think about certain things and priorities. The thought also is that we would try and use this as an outreach vehicle. We're building a list of community contacts of organizations where we might say to them, here's something about the project, and here is the link on the site. If you would put this paragraph and the link in your newsletter, we would appreciate it. And I think that is a way for us to at least start engagement. And what we can then do as we have information about things and as we develop things, areas of concern, when MSBI comes forth with whatever they're going to tell us, then what we can do is additional surveys, maybe one about housing, maybe one about open spaces. The survey we're doing now is going to have preliminary questions about those things, but then we can get into more detail. So that the first thought about this would be a means of outreach and engagement, and just get some initial ideas about what people are thinking and what they think are priorities. And that's simply where we're
I
at.
think
Sandy,
we're
do you have
losing you, Letty,
anything?
or at least I am. I don't know if you guys can hear.
What?
No, I didn't lose her.
Oh, okay. And Sandy, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or any more detail, any more explanation than that, or?
No, other than Letty has been doing a great job on this. She's leading the charge. So we're following carefully.
Oh, boy.
Thank you, Letty.
Okay. That's it. And when we're more advanced, we'll have more to share.
Kavitha's screen seems to be frozen.
Yeah, I was getting ready to tell you her screen is frozen.
Rich, maybe
Yeah.
this would be a good time to do your chair's report.
I will. I only have a couple of things on behalf of the Housing and Homelessness Committee that I want to bring up. One is that there are a whole bunch of land use actions coming up over the next few months across community board committees, in the land use committee, and I think one or two in the housing committee. So keep your eyes peeled for those. They involve conversion and expansion of homelessness and supportive housing projects. There are MTA related actions and a range of other things. So we probably will want support from these committees at those land use meetings. The only other thing I want to mention is that I've gotten requests from outside the community board for information about the status of the density reduction hotel homeless shelter program from people in the community who want to know how long DHS is planning to extend that. I don't have any information, but I want to put it on the record that I'm getting asked, so that hopefully we can follow up after this meeting.
Duly noted, Rich. We'll follow up with DHS. Though the last time we asked them this a few weeks ago, they were unsure, but we will ask again.
Yeah.
Keep asking.
If we've lost Kavitha, Jesus, have we come to the end of the agenda?
We have, but it does look like Ann Seligman requests the floor.
Okay. Ann, go ahead.
Thanks, Rich. I'm only saying this, I'm just throwing this out there because it is a joint committee meeting, and I have been collecting books and games and such for the Vanderbilt Y, and I just kind of want to remind everybody that I'm still doing that. So maybe if you don't want to throw out a reminder for that, maybe we could put another reminder in next Wednesday's email or something. The need still exists, and I'm still happy to do it. So it didn't generate quite as much energy as we hoped it might, but I brought many bags and books over there, and maybe we could get a few more.
And send the office an email with that request, and we can see what we can do about advertising that. Also, Rich, thank you for mentioning all the various land use actions and also housing committee actions that are coming down the pike. Members, please, between now and the June full board, please read your CB6 emails very, very closely. On Wednesday, this past Wednesday, I did send out the Wednesday email that goes only to to board members, and in there it has links to it lists all 6 of the land use items. Please read it. Click on all the links. Start familiarizing yourself, because all 6 of these resolutions are going to come up at June's full board for a vote. So there's a lot of them, and I know Kyle wants to avoid a repeat of what happened in April, where some people weren't sure what was being voted on, and so he wants everyone to be super informed and prepared to vote at June's full board. So we'll keep sending out those links every few days, every week, but please read them. Encourage your fellow board members to read them. And Rich, it doesn't look like we're going to get Kavitha back, so if you'll close us out.
Yes. Is there any other old or new business that anyone would like to raise? I see Ann's hand raised, but I don't think it's really raised. And I see Sandra's hand raised.
Yeah, and sorry, I just wonder, Jesus, is it confirmed that the hotel text amendment is going to come to this committee.
It is confirmed.
So that's next month, and that's also a really interesting one because apparently it's controversial. Let's put it that way. So good to follow up on. And it
And we have,
may be a result of some of the things that have happened with converting hotels into homeless shelters. So
we have asked George James for a memo on that, and as well as on zoning for accessibility. And I'm still waiting to hear back about 343. So he's pretty swamped right now, as you can imagine. So we're going to try and get as many memos as we can out of him in time for these meetings.
okay, great, thank you.
Hey guys, sorry about that. Having some.
Looks like Kavitha came back just in time to adjourn.
Yes, I did. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I've been having technical issues like all week. So just got bumped off. I'm going to keep my camera off for now, but that was it.
Yeah.
I see you guys are talking about, I think next month's meeting already, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. In terms of the chair's report, that's all I really had. We're trying to tag team with some SPNA upcoming events for maybe a soft launch of the survey in the next month or two.
Mhm.
And that's really all I had. I didn't know if there was if we have any older new business, or if Rich, if you had anything.
I gave a brief report during your
Great.
absence, so I've
Great.
already been covered.
Okay, thanks, Rich. So okay, overall older new business, anyone, or are we?
It looks like Lou requests the floor.
Okay, Lou, go ahead.
Move to adjourn.
Second,
Okay, if there are no objections, we can adjourn, and I can't see everybody's participants, but I'm assuming, I'm seeing no objections. This meeting is adjourned at 8:04 p.m. Thanks, everybody.